Yang Speaks is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Your data is your business. Protect it at expressvpn.com/yang. I have friends in Silicon Valley who could not watch Silicon Valley, your show on HBO, because they said it just hit too close to home. They were like, it's too real.
For me, it was a real wake-up call because I think it was season 2 or 3. We would sort of do these trips, right? We would go to Silicon Valley and we would show the episode and we'd sort of like tour companies and get to see what they were working on. And they were very excited to have us because we're we're doing a show about what they do. I was stunned at what little thought was going into the moral and ethical ramifications of the technology that they were working on. I remember, I won't name the company, but they were showing us this new product that's now on the market that many people have. And they were like, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. And so we brought up a privacy concern. They were shocked that they were asked this question. They didn't even have like a fake corporate answer ready to go. They were stunned and a little upset and disappointed that we would even think of that.
So we just got breaking news, Andrew, literally right this second. You want to break it?
Yeah, the feds are bringing a suit against the Dr. Robert Hadden that assaulted Evelyn and dozens, maybe hundreds of other women. It looks like he's going to be sent to jail, and they're picking up where the DA of Manhattan somehow declined to prosecute. And so the doctor has been sitting in a house in New Jersey, essentially taking early retirement. And I am so thrilled that justice is being done, though it's very late in coming. Not just for all the women that suffered at the hands of Dr. Hadden, but also, in my mind, he's a danger still. You know, I mean, the guy is like a pathological sex offender, just free walking around in New Jersey. I don't even think he had to put his name on any registry or record. So, you know, like, and so the fact that he's being sent to prison, it's a massive relief, and it's also a massive source of pride because I feel like he'd still be free if not for Evelyn's courage coming forward. So thank you to everyone who supported Evelyn, and thrilled that justice is being done. Better late than never.
So I was with Evelyn when she did her CNN interview. A couple things. There's nothing you can do to take back the horror this man has caused in so many people's lives, in Evelyn's and many other women. But hopefully this is some sort of, this feels like justice and feels great. It's one of the reasons we love CNN. Dana Bash and Bridget Nolan, who we worked with on the piece, and their whole team were they were world class. They were just sensitive. They were real, but they were honest. They were fair. And it's obviously a tough topic. So I'm forever grateful. I think we all are. And I'll say this. Our campaign did a lot of things, and a lot of good things. But if the only reason we ran was to put that guy behind bars, somehow that still feels worth it, you know?
Yeah, this is a pure good we accomplished, people. So thank you. And thank you for all the support.
Thank you all.
Yeah, and thank you for the support for Evelyn and our family. She really appreciates it. And now there are a lot of women right now who are also feeling like their voices were heard and that they had some measure of justice for this doctor that assaulted so many of them.
Yeah, it's in a world right now where things are pretty dark. There's not much to look forward to all the time. This is good news. This feels fucking good, you know. This feels really good. So, rot in jail, Dr. Haddock. What's his name? I don't even bother learning that guy's name.
Dr. Hadden, yeah.
Wanted to share with all of you, and for all of you that were involved with sharing or supporting Evelyn or the love, thank you. Justice was served. All right, guys, on today's episode, we've got the one and only Kumail Nanjiani, star of Silicon Valley, star of The Big Sick, writer of Big Sick, and also just got ripped for his new Marvel movie. Pretty cool. But before that, Andrew and I talk about WWE, we talk about wildfires, we talk about ransomware, and we even make some hot NFL predictions as the season just opened. So tune in, Kumail Nanjiani and Andrew Yang here on Yang Speaks. Welcome back to Yang Speaks. Andrew, how you living, man?
COVID fine, 2020 good. There's always a qualifier, but I certainly can't complain.
Man. So the pressing issue this week, man, you went off relatively unprompted, although I've heard you go off on this in private and a couple times in the campaign show. You just went on a Twitter rampage on Labor Day against Vince McMahon, who is the founder and I guess CEO still of the World Wrestling Entertainment, WWE. That's what that stands for.
A proud Connecticut business. You might know it well. Yeah. So it wasn't entirely unprompted. They came out with a policy that was restricting pro wrestlers from using Cameo under their name and likeness, which struck me as absolutely ridiculous. And so the first thing I said was, wow, this is strange given that they're independent contractors. It's like, on what universe can you restrict independent contractors from just going on and leaving video messages of themselves? But then I thought about what it really meant. And you're right that I've been thinking about this for a while. And I came out with a policy about it in regards to MMA fighters, which is, to me, systematic exploitation, where they're getting 12 to 15% of the sport's revenues instead of the 50% that other sports are getting their athletes. And WWE has a lot of parallels. It's not a sport in the same way, but it kind of has all the features of a sport in terms of being talent-driven, people risking their lives, and exploitation in the WWE's case. So they label everyone as independent contractors. Meanwhile, they don't get health care. They don't get recovery time, which is crucial, which is one reason why a lot of these wrestlers get addicted to painkillers and other drugs, because they have to go out there and perform all the time. And they're always afraid that if they say, look, I'm not going to get out there this week or this month, they'll lose their spot, because that's the way Vince works. It's the way the business works. So this is all flying in the face of them being independent contractors, particularly when the WWE in particular controls your life, more or less. Like they tell you where to be, what to do, how to look, how to act. You can't do this, you can't do that. Like, they'll control tons of elements of your professional life and even to some extent your personal life, and then they'll say, but no, like, you're an independent contractor. And so I got angry, and then I went on a little tweet storm, and I was prompted to this, Zach, by a professional wrestler who sent me the original Cameo story. A professional wrestler who felt exploited was like, this shit is ridiculous. So it wasn't just that Andrew Yang was got upset. It was that some wrestlers were upset but could not actually vent about it because Vince has absolute power and could. And if you are a wrestler who doesn't even work for Vince, you can't say shit because you might eventually want to work for Vince. Like they're not quite a monopoly, but they function like it in some respects. It's one reason why I'm excited that there is genuine competition arising in the form of AEW in particular, because I feel like that company has a real chance to introduce reform. And that company has a chance to introduce reform in part because it's talent friendly. There are many very senior executives that are current wrestlers. And so it's a different animal than the WWE.
Okay, so I grew up in musical theater, which is not cool, but and very different than wrestling. However, so to me, you could look at them as athletes, like professional athletes, or you could look at them as actors. they're probably somewhere in between there. So if they're athletes, you pay them like athletes get paid, and they have a union and they get to negotiate and they get paid based on a chunk of revenue, right? Like they do in the MLB or NFL or any of these arenas. Or if they're actors, right? Actors have a union on Broadway. They actually have an actor's equity card where you can't get exploited. They can't be that sort of, you need to give them benefits. You need to give them XYZ hours. How should it be structured? And then why have it's two questions. One, how should it be structured? And two, are they in limbo? Is it just, to me, it's like, yes, maybe Vince is an asshole, but I also kind of stuck in this, like, we don't know what you are, so we can just do whatever we want with you. Is that part of it too? What do you think on those two things?
There was an online suggestion that they should be unionized under the Screen Actors Guild because they essentially are performers on screen. And so SAG would take care of a lot of this stuff. But I think the professional sports analog is closer in terms of the risk they're taking physically. I mean, for me, the big issue is what the nature of the benefits they're getting. So if they get them because they're members of SAG or their own union, fantastic. Or if the WWE were to say, look, you're clearly employees. I mean, heck, like, we control lots of elements of your waking life. So guess what? You all get healthcare. You all get retirement benefits. You all get an off season. You all get this. Like, however we get there, we just need to get there. And one of the things I said, which got some news or buzz, was, look, if I'm not the Secretary of Labor, like, I'll know the Secretary of Labor. Like, we can get this done. And it actually falls under the National Labor Relations Board. But the National Labor Relations Board are appointed by the administration. So right now you have a bunch of Trump appointees who are putting any action under the rug because Vince and Trump are good friends from way back. Dana White and Trump are also friendly. It's funny the parallels between
who owns UFC.
Yeah, WWE and UFC here. But there's a lot of exploitation going on, and there are things we can do about it as soon as there's a different administration.
It's clearly illegal to me. My question is, like, when this stuff happens to other athletes, there's usually more uproar. And wrestling is super popular, in its own world, right? It's massive. It's prime time on
some of the top cable rated shows every week. I think WWE, last I checked, was $1 billion business. I haven't looked at the market cap lately.
But there doesn't seem to be the same uproar. You know what I'm saying? Is it because it's wrestling and that you're either a wrestling fan or you're not? There's very few casual wrestling fans, I think. Like, why is there not as much uproar? Or is it because a lot of these fans of WWE maybe lean more right, and so they care less about it?
I grew up a massive wrestling fan. I feel like every kid in my town did. Yeah. So, I don't think politics really enters in myself. It's like, is every 12-year-old leaning right? I don't think that.
Fair. Yeah.
But I agree with you. I think wrestling has its own domain in the culture, and it doesn't really interact or intersect with mainstream politics a lot of the time. UFC is similar, where just no one gives a shit because it's a fighter or a wrestler. And to me, that's so dumb because these are people that
are humans. Yeah.
That dedicated years and years of their life honing a craft. They're risking their bodies every time out there, and it's $1 billion business. So what the hell are we waiting for? But I agree with you that for whatever reason, it doesn't get the attention it deserves in the mainstream news. And I'm going to keep beating the drum until that changes because I'm sick of this. Like, as a fan, it's upsetting seeing so many of your childhood heroes die early because these wrestlers are abusing themselves in order to keep their jobs. And then they die of a heart attack at 45 or like whatever the heck the age is.
Right. And they're physical specimens too. They shouldn't be, they should be taken care of. You know what I'm saying? They're not. These are some of the most elite bodies in society. Like they should be in great health in some ways, but they're dying because they're either not paid or not taken care of or.
It's a difficult lifestyle, and there are elements of it that you can't do much about, but there are elements you can do something about, and you should do that. So I think in wrestling's case, it's crystal clear because, they have a lot of discretion over what they can do there. I mean, you could have an off season for wrestlers that's baked in. Like they just get a month off or more. I mean, heck, professional athletes get.
There's no off season. They just go all year.
Yeah.
What?
If you had an
off
off
season, if you're
The
Rock, you were going the whole time. You're just going.
If you are a high level wrestler, you're still getting paid on like very often an appearance basis, and so at that point, you're making more money than you've ever made, and you show up not just for TV tapings, but if there were tours, as there normally are, during house shows. So you might be performing, like 200 times, like like in a given 18-month period or something. Like it's like, and so you can imagine, and a lot of this involves travel to a different place. So one of the complaints that wrestlers have is that they don't get a break. And instead, if you're a top draw, then the culture is like, well, you better show up, because if you don't show up, you're going to lose your spot. And then you're like, oh, snap, I spent my entire career trying to get into this position. So then let's say you hurt yourself.
You have to keep going.
Yeah, you hurt yourself earlier that week. What are you going to do? You're going to pop some painkillers and get out there. And so that's what happens to a lot of these guys.
For those of you who, like me, or like didn't grow up a wrestling fan, like, oh, this stuff's fake. Just watch a clip of wrestling. Like, yes, it's fake in terms it's somewhat scripted, but if they're jumping from the top of a rope, they're still jumping from the top of the rope, right? They're still slamming their body on the ground. They're still picking up a full-grown man and slamming him to the ground. Like, even if it's scripted or they're not really punching each other, they're still taking a beating, right? Like it's a gnarly sport.
It's very, very difficult on your body. You can liken it to stuntmen, really. It's like real life stuntmen going out there and performing, and then packing up their stuff and then driving to the next town and doing it again.
Yep. You ever see that movie Concussion with Will Smith?
There are parallels there.
But
it's the NFL.
Yeah,
and
well, he
whatnot.
says, Will Smith has a line in there that I thought was fascinating. He said, look, it's not about whether or not being a warrior is right or wrong. Because some people get really, when the football concussions were happening, people were like, well, we shouldn't be hitting each other that way. And he's like, that's not what it's about. It's about America needs to take care of their warriors. That's one of my favorite lines in that movie. Like, we got to take care of they entertain us. They're bred in our system, like we worship these guys and gals. We need to take care of them. I think that's pretty logical. And that's why, if you're listening to this, you're not a wrestling fan, that's why you should care, because the principle of this, that we care about money more than people, is pervasive throughout society, and these are massive examples.
America needs to take care of its warriors on every level. So that's the veterans who return home. That's people who are risking their body for our entertainment every given weekend or every given week.
Our nurses on the front lines, all of it. Yeah. So the final tweet on your thread was, Vince, you'd better hope your old friend Donald wins, because change is in the air and changes are long overdue where your corrupt labor practices are concerned. It would give me great pleasure. The people know. So for Yang Gang out there that followed him on the campaign, like, I had the same emotion you had. Like, fuck yes, Yang. Like, this is I wish you would take off the heads of some of your Democratic primary contenders at times too, but maybe, there's some political strategy there. But I love when you get angry, and it's terrifying when it's directed at me, man. But most of the time, it's pretty awesome to watch. So, thank you for that tweet, boss. You're really humble about it too, because you don't get that angry very often. But when you do, it's a sight, which I love. So, and appreciate that. Gonna change gears. I want your thoughts on this, and I don't think you have a lot of thoughts on it, which is why I think it'll be funny. So it turns out one of the major California wildfires was started by a gender reveal. So Andrew, we were talking about this a little before, and I want to dive in. I don't think you're familiar with gender reveals.
Is it what I think of when gender reveals? It's like cake, and you slice into it, and then like the flavor of the cake tells you whether you're having a boy or girl. So someone obviously knows, and then you don't know. So that's what occurs to me, but I did not know fire entered the equation.
So they started these things, and the woman who popularized gender reveals, which I'm not really, I could do more research, but I don't think people care of how that happened. But let's say the woman credited for popularizing gender reveals said they've gone too far. This is getting ridiculous. But basically, people go nuts, and they have these. They're like canisters of smoke, either pink or blue, and they have a friendly explosion. And they've done anything from like piñatas and baseball bats to soccer balls when you kick it and it turns a color. And some of them are cute, but generally no one gives a shit. Like no one. And to me, it bothers me because I don't know, if your friend's having a baby, you already got to go to the baby shower, and then you got to give another baby gift. A gender reveal party, which people are having, and then posting on Instagram and YouTube, whatever it is another way to me just to, I have to pay for another gift. Let me ask you, Andrew, have you ever, you didn't do a gender reveal for your boys?
No, we just knew as soon as it was medically possible for us to know, because like I'm a practical sort, and was like, well, sooner we know, sooner we can prepare. Yeah. And when we found out that our second was going to be a boy, I was like, well, I don't need to get much, because I think we can just pass all the older ones stuff down. To me, what's going on with the wildfires is such a catastrophe. And I tweeted that the weather in LA was 120 degrees over the weekend, a record heat wave. And then you're seeing these epic wildfires all over the state. And the images seem apocalyptic. Someone called it fire porn, where you can just look at the California wildfire pictures and just have your jaw drop in wonder that it's not a special effect. People ask what we can do. I mean, this is a situation that, to me, after the fire is out, or after the fire is raging, it's too late, in the sense that it's very difficult. I mean, you need to have the right resources and everything, but ideally you'd be controlling the fuel at a much higher level, where these forests have become tinderboxes as California is drying up. It seems impossible, but these wildfires are just going to get worse.
Yeah. So a lot of LA, people don't always realize this piece, is that a lot of LA is desert, right? A lot, and part around San Francisco in some places too. It's pretty dry. But mainly LA and Southern California. To me, this is what seems to happen every year. We're like, oh man, wildfires are bad. I hope they're not bad this year. And then we kind of like, there's someone in your mind, but then they come and they're disastrous, and we're shocked, as if like, I feel like we had a whole year to kind of prepare for this, or years and years. We know every year wildfires are terrible. And you talked about a lot in the campaign where you would
quintuple the U.S. Forest Service
forestry budget.
Yeah.
And it's all federal. It's mainly a federal problem, right? Because it's federal parks. Land. They cross state lines. And then some of these places end up a tinderbox, and they're a tinderbox. Like, this is where they normally start, that sort of thing. What else? I mean, do you remember some of the things you talked about on the trail about what you would do to fight and prevent these in the future? A lot of it was preventative, if I recall.
Now, again, after there's a wildfire raging, it's harder to put it out. So you'd want to invest in managing the forests to a higher level. Right now, less than 10% of the national forest is actually getting managed for fire suppression. So 90% is not.
Less than 10%.
Yes. You would need to invest massive resources to properly manage the tinderboxes that are forming. These fires are easier to put out earlier rather than later, where, after they consume enough fuel, they become uncontrollable. So in addition to investing in the U.S. Forest Service, I was hypothesizing that you could do more in terms of installing heat sensors in various acres of land, and then have some kind of rapid deployment unit that descended on the place as soon as you saw that there was a fire breaking out, before it got too bad. Now, some people will be like, wow, that sounds expensive. I mean, do you know how much these current wildfires are costing us in terms of not just property damage, but loss of life in many cases? You're looking at billions of dollars over time. So which would you rather spend money on? Some freaking awesome fuel management fire suppression unit with heat sensors in your forests, or watching your communities get consumed by wildfire. And this is a federal problem because, like you said, a lot of these lands are federal responsibility. Even California right now is being impacted by land that it doesn't have purview over. So, this is just another example of our government being asleep at the switch, where you look up and be like, oh, another year, another series of record-breaking fires, and it's like, well, someone want to do something about that? And the feds are like, well, we don't really exist to adapt. We just take last year's budget and then increase or decrease it by 5 or 10%, and then everyone just chills out. It's very, very frustrating. If I was in California, I'd be raging at the federal government. I'm raging at the federal government anyway.
Yeah, you're raging at the federal government without being out there. One of my buddies from high school actually became one of the guys that like parachutes out of helicopters and fights wildfires, which is a dangerous job, but also relatively interesting. I mean, it's cool for sure. And we're not a big fan of like federal jobs guarantees or excessive government labor, but this seems like a place where there's a lot of particularly young men that probably really interested in a job like that, especially if they're unemployed or don't like their current job or that kind of thing, because that's a need that's not going anywhere at this rate. That's where I think, where government resources be wisely spent, in my opinion.
Yes, quintuple the U.S. Forest Service budget and hire the heck out of a bunch of people that would go in and manage the forests so that we don't deal with these fires breaking records every year. And you talk about the government and jobs. I mean, the reality is we have millions and millions of Americans who are unemployed right now and underemployed. So we should be investing in anything that makes sense as a job creator. And this one's a no-brainer.
Yeah, no-brainer.
All right, everyone, it's time to get personal and a little bit deep and detailed. But one of the things I love to do is try and pick up lessons from other countries where they figured something out and we have not figured it out. Like the metric system, something like that. You know what else they figured out? Bidets. They're environmentally friendlier, they're more effective, they're the more efficient way to handle something that we all do. And now you can make that happen here without a new appliance. It's just an attachment. I know this is like technologically awesome and environmentally friendly. It just seems a little weird to Americans, but to the rest of the world, they're like, what are you guys doing? There are better ways. So if this speaks to you, you can go to hellotushy.com/yang to get 10% off their bidet attachment. It's kind of awesome. Special offer for Yang Speaks. Go to hellotushy.com/yang for 10% off. I know, but I genuinely believe, it's funny, we talked to the team about this, they were like laughing, and I was like, I genuinely just believe in bidets. I don't know what that says about me, but to me, this is just a better way. It's a better solution. It's more environmentally friendly. It's more efficient. It's just smarter. So yeah, hellotushy.com/yang.
I want to change gears. An interesting story I saw, it reminded me of you, but also it hit my hometown, so it touched home. So I'm a Buffalo Bills fan. I lived in Buffalo for 2 years when I was little, but I grew up outside of Hartford in Connecticut. And so Hartford had something. They're supposed to start schools after Labor Day on Tuesday, and the whole public school system shut down for an extra day because of something called ransomware. And someone basically hacked their school bus software, and said if you don't, ransomware is what they, in this case, was a virus that said if you don't pay us XYZ in whether it's files or money or crypto or whatever the hell they offer, whatever the ransom is, the virus doesn't go away. And we're going to keep attacking your crap. And we were joking about this before the show, Andrew, is apparently this was like not a big headline. Like I saw this because I follow some I check in on my hometown, my people. But this stuff apparently happens all the time. Like ransomware is actually kind of common. And for some reason, we just shrug like, oh, don't worry, the government got hijacked today for a day. We'll go back to normal tomorrow. Like no one's talking about this at all. And it happens pretty often. Like, have you seen this stuff? Like, what are your thoughts on ransomware?
Yeah, it does happen more often than you'd think. Like it's happened to dozens of communities. And the tough reality is that it's much easier to hack a lot of these systems than it is to somehow secure them, particularly if you're a cash-strapped school district or whatnot. Like the last thing you're worried about is investing in being hacker-proof, unfortunately. And then when someone comes and holds your feet over a fire saying, hey, do this or do that, then oftentimes your move is going to be like, well, let's pay or let's cancel school or and so these things are happening around the country and we're not making enough of it. I think we're not making enough of it because we don't have a solution in many of these communities. And I think it erodes public trust even more, public confidence even more, if you know that your kid's school bus's software is hackable, though it almost certainly is. Yeah. And this is one of the symptoms of being behind the curve on a government level, where at a minimum, what you'd want to do is you'd want to have like a really concerted task force that's like, look, anyone who does something like this to Hartford or a town, like we're going to investigate the heck out of you and come get you wherever you are, whether you're in the country or not. But right now, I feel like these sorts of schemes are getting swept under the rug because people don't have confidence that we can fix it.
Yeah. I mean, their mayor did say they invested in new cybersecurity technology and that shortened, they basically stopped this, didn't have to pay a ransom, and only lasted a day. So it's better than, I guess, what it could have been. I wonder if...
Yeah, sometimes they have to pay. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't expect every city to be extremely tech savvy given the type of country we have. But I wonder if the federal government could have a list of approved vendors or approved providers or have an internal service as well that we are passionate about and hold those organizations accountable to offer the states. I don't know. To me, you joke that we are in a third world country because like, oh yeah, government's hacked today, don't worry about it. Like that's the future we want to avoid. If we can being Venezuela, I don't know. I felt bad for Hartford. I don't think it's the mayor's fault.
Yeah, and that would be a tough thing too, being an elected official and then being like, what the heck? Like I was supposed to be like, the tech expert here in,
Yeah, he gets blamed for it, right? Or she gets blamed for it.
yeah. So like that strikes me as unfair. But in our country today, I probably would fall on that person to somehow shoulder the blame.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, there are things that we could do along the lines of what you're describing, but it requires like a real overhaul, Zach, because a lot of these public entities are using systems from a long time ago. Like, you just need a massive modernization push here in the U.S. because some of the more modern systems are more resistant and resilient.
Oh, man. All right. On more positive news, Andrew, a couple things. One, football is Sunday. You're a bigger NBA fan, so you're probably having more fun. But I am ecstatic. I think the Bills are winning the AFC East this year, and Josh Allen's contending for MVP. So those of you listening who care, don't care, it doesn't matter. You heard it here first. Josh Allen is going to have a fantastic year, and the Bills are winning the AFC. It's our year, baby. I'm pumped. And my other prediction is that I think because of COVID, the teams with like culture and let's call it like consistent head coaching and consistent ownership and management will outperform. So your Ravens, your Steelers, your Seahawks, the Bills have been pretty good past couple years, your Niners. I think they're going to outperform. Thoughts on the season? Any predictions? Any hot takes you want to make, man? What do you? Your NBA takes. People used to yell at me on the trail because they were bad. Maybe you'll redeem yourself with football. I don't know.
Well, certainly my football takes will be almost uniformly poor. So certainly don't want to give anyone any bad suggestions. Though it does seem like the Bills have
no
a
one's
shot.
betting on your stuff, I don't think.
That's good. Yeah, the Patriots, if they manage to win post Brady, then everyone else should just give up.
I'm gonna give up. If the Pats go to the Super Bowl again or are contenders this year, I'm out, dude. I can't do it. They've lost so many players.
If that happens, the Bills, the Jets, and the Dolphins should all come together and just have some kind of ceremony where they submit to the Patriots.
I would be for that, man, because I think you could. Because then you'd actually say you could put the best team that the Jets, Dolphins, and Bills could put together, and we'd probably still lose. And
that was actually one of the jokes about where it was actually you should have all three teams merge, make it a 2-team division, and it would be you consolidate every other AFC East team. You make a Voltron super team.
It's so painful.
Oh, but your Bills have a good shot.
Bills are good this year.
And hanging out with you too, I started to root for the Bills because if you're around someone who's rooting as hard as you were, then you naturally start rooting for them too.
Well, thanks, man. I tend to make everybody else's lives miserable when the Bills lose, so a lot of the staff would root for the Bills for their own self-interest. Because that'd be better. If the Bills win, people ask for budget requests. That's when they ask for them on the campaign trail.
That's funny.
You have being great.
Very smart. Way to manage up, team.
Oh yeah, team manage up. Great. I'm putty in their hands. Most importantly, Andrew, Unagi scooter giveaway. Yes, we did it. We're giving away 3 of them, Andrew. And we're gonna do 1 on this episode. Did you know that? I don't know if I told you that. Surprise. You knew we were giving away though.
I love these scooters and I love giving them away because I know whoever gets it's gonna be so happy. It's just gonna make their life better to have this thing. It's like a 21st century magic carpet. I can't say enough about how much fun these things are.
Today's winner, the first Unagi scooter, is drumroll. First winner is Caroline Garrido. It's Caroline _Garrido. Y'all can follow her and congratulate her if you want on Instagram. Caroline, we will reach out to you. Congratulations. You're going to love this thing. Oh my gosh. I love this thing. I love it so much. Andrew does. If I wanted to bore people, I would just post videos of you and me just riding the scooter all day. Because that happens every day. I don't know. So here's the deal. If you want a scooter, we're going to be announcing winners on our Instagram. So that's at Andrew Yang and at Zach Grauman on Instagram. The next way to win will be announced shortly, probably on our next Monday episode. Regardless, though, we love Unagi scooters. We love giving them away. We love giving shit away on this show, regardless, Andrew. Whether it's money, Unagi scooters, football advice. What else do you give away?
Mainly money. I mean, Humanity Forward's up to $8 million and counting plus. So thank you to everyone who supported and continues to support our efforts because there's just a lot of need, a lot of pain. And so being able to do something about it is a real gift and privilege. So thank you. But yeah, we love giving stuff away, and that includes fun electric scooters.
That's true. And I know people prefer money, but we'll do money and we'll do scooters and we'll do more too. So our next guest he's such a badass. I'm going to butcher his name, but not out of, maybe it's out of ignorance, but it has nothing to do with how much I love him because I love this guy. How do I pronounce his name? It's
Kumail Nanjiani.
Kumail Nanjiani. He's a badass. So cool.
Plus, he got super ripped for a Marvel movie. So he's at this point now, he's super smart, super funny, and super ripped. and he's been giving guidance to people on how to manage their mental health and the well-being during the pandemic. I'm a big fan of his too. Silicon Valley, Big Sick, everything he does, he elevates. And I can't wait to talk to him.
There's a certain element of elevating your acting career from like comedian to action hero, which the steps in between include a shirtless GQ magazine cover where you're ripped. Like Jim from The Office, John Krasinski did this. I'm trying to think of other examples. But that, I think that, or the guy who plays the what's his name who's Darth Vader in Star Wars, or not Darth Vader. Who's the bad guy in the new Star Wars movies? You know what I'm talking about.
Adam Driver, Kylo Ren.
Adam Driver, yes, same thing. I don't know if he's been completely shirtless, but definitely more jacked. I think it's a rite of passage. Here's a thought, Andrew. Between now and the next office you run for, we get you jacked. Evelyn would like this. We get you jacked like you were in like high school, college, and we announce as a shirtless cover of GQ, or you can pick the magazine.
I feel like that would probably not help my seriousness factor.
No, you don't think so?
But it would help my prospects of being cast in a Marvel movie. So there'd be like a cost benefit.
And you just had like a Yang Gang tattoo on the left pec, like something badass, but like not like a joke Yang Gang, like I don't know, like blood or awesomeness. I don't know. There's some fans listening to this that I think are loving this visual, that I think it's hilarious. Sorry you're not as excited about it as I am, but I think I'm cracking up. This is one way to launch a new office run. Okay, I'm done, man. I'm done. Tune in, guys. Kumail, right after this break. Yang Speaks listeners, you know what time it is. It is time to plug our featured sponsor, ExpressVPN. And they're our featured sponsor. We don't just choose that lightly. We created this partnership with ExpressVPN because we believe in the product. I'm using it right now. Last night I was watching Rick and Morty, I think from Australia, through my ExpressVPN on Netflix because I don't have Hulu. I use Netflix because they have Rick and Morty in whatever country it was. And I got new shows on Netflix because of ExpressVPN. But it also protects your data, it protects your location, it protects your privacy. It's simple. Oh my God, it's so freaking easy to download this thing. Because I'm bad at this stuff. You literally just download it and then click a button to turn on. So this thing is rated #1 VPN on the market by Wired and CNET and The Verge. It's not just us saying this. This is pretty much unanimous that these guys are the best. So here's the deal. Protect your online privacy today with ExpressVPN. We're going to give you 3 months of ExpressVPN protection for free. ExpressVPN.com/Yang. That's EXPRESSVPN.com/Yang for 3 months free with the 1-year package. Visit ExpressVPN.com/Yang to learn more about this awesome deal and protect yourselves, people. Geez, let's be smart about this stuff.
I am thrilled to welcome to Yang Speaks. What has he not done? Actor, comedian, screenwriter, visionary, philosophy and comp sci graduate of the Kumail Nanjiani. Kumail, welcome to Yang Speaks. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Well, that and now I feel like you're the closest thing our society has to a superhero right now, because we all know you're super ripped. So you had to go through the Hollywood training crucible where the taskmasters at Disney assigned you a dietitian and trainers and the whole 9 yards for the regimen. And it cracked me and my wife up, because we're like, imagine your husband just coming home and being like, hey, for my job, I now have to become essentially a real life superhero.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say, they did get me all those people. They gave me the infrastructure to do it, Disney, but they put no pressure on me. They were like, if you want to do this, you can, but seriously, you don't have to. And I was like, I'm going to do it the most possible. Emily was like, they don't want you to do this. You're doing this because you want to do it. I'm like, yeah, I've always wanted to do this, and I just haven't had the time or the determination to really see it through. So it was kind of awesome to do. It was also a real nightmare and a real pain, and it continues to be.
Oh, so that's one of the questions I had, is that, so you show up, you're ripped, you get footage of you for this movie, The Eternals, and then I'm thinking to myself, does he have to stay ripped until this thing wraps? And what the heck is that?
Yeah, well, for me, I have tried to stay in shape. Since then, in the same way, my goal was, until the movie comes out, when you go and do the interviews, I didn't want to look like radically different on the red carpet than I do in the movie. So that was my goal. And now, the release date for the movie got delayed, so I have to keep at it a little bit longer. But it's interesting you brought up my wife, because she's still a little surprised by it. Every now and then she'll like hug me, and she'll just be like, "You just feel so different." And I feel the most different when I'm in bed trying to turn, sleep on my side. I can feel it's like trying to steer a ship. I'm not used to doing that movement yet.
I thought you were going to say you have less padding than you used to. It's like you turn on your side and you're like, oh, it's more muscle there. There used to be some cushion.
It really is less padding. It's interesting the ways that your body feels different. I was going to say something, but I feel like that's a little bit inappropriate, so I'll leave it.
Oh, you can get as inappropriate as you want, man. It's a podcast. One of the things I had in mind when I was running for president was, if it's a podcast, it doesn't matter. If it's a podcast, it's like no one will ever see this, and it's just going to disappear into the internet. Whereas, if it was a cable news appearance, and all of a sudden it was very, very serious stuff. So the stuff that, and you might have gone into this in a setting that I have not seen, but the thing that fascinates me about you is your origin story, because I have no fucking clue how a guy would come from Pakistan here for college, study computer science and philosophy at Grinnell, which is someplace I know. I campaigned there, and then somehow wind up like a TV star, movie star. When you have really educated parents, I have educated parents too, and my parents would not have had anything to do with me if I just disappeared for a while or was like, I'm going to do comedy. They didn't like it very much when I said politics, which is a pretty serious thing.
I think so. If I was running for president, my parents would have a tough reaction.
Yeah, mine were not thrilled either. But the thing that is this mystery to me is, so I can see your background through college. That stuff makes sense to me. And I don't know if you remember this, but you and I met briefly at the Global Entrepreneurship Summit in Silicon Valley. We were both in line to get pictures with President Obama. I don't know if you remember this. You and the cast of Silicon Valley did the skit ahead of time, and then we were just chilling in line together. Do you remember that?
I do remember that, and it took us over 2 years to get that picture because they had to vet everyone.
That was a long ass line, and I gotta say, Kumail, not to sound cocky or whatever, but I had a picture with him from a couple months earlier. So
I was like, why am I doing this again? I've already seen this movie. I know how it ends.
Yeah, it ends with me shaking Obama's hand and him talking about how awesome I
am. He was very. That was the most I've talked to him. He was very charming, funny, and I was actually supposed to have dinner with him at one point. I think it was towards the end of last year, and then I had to be out of the country and I couldn't do it, and I was very, very disappointed. But yeah, that's the only time I've met him.
Well, so to me, there's this massive fog of mystery between Kumail, the recent college graduate, and then by the time I saw you and the world saw you, you were a TV star. In Silicon Valley was when I think most of the world met you. And so I know you've done the clubs, you've done the entire circuit. Tell us about that time, because that time just strikes me as such a ringer. The fact that you flung yourself into that ringer after Grinnell.
Man, I'll tell you, starting stand-up comedy is an absolute ringer. It really, really is. It's difficult. And I started in August 2001 is when I started doing stand-up comedy. So if you remember your history, then it's 9/11 happens that year. And I continue doing stand-up comedy, looking like me, sounding like me, with my name, getting up on stage in front of drunk people trying to tell jokes. So I always have this thing where, like, sometimes people will troll me on Twitter and then they'll be like, "Are your feelings hurt?" And I'm like, "Man, whatever it takes to hurt my feelings, you don't got it. I promise." I've been through some of the worst situations. So basically, how it works is I graduated college in computer science and philosophy. One of those is practical to get you a job, and the other one is not as practical. The issue was, I found philosophy very interesting and I was very engaged and I felt like I was good at it. Like I could make persuasive arguments. I was good at writing papers. I really enjoyed it. Computer science, I always felt like I missed one class somewhere and just like never caught up. I was like not good at it. Managed to get a job in computer science, but never really felt engaged, never felt like it was for me. And I'd sort of at that point really fallen in love with stand-up comedy, just watching stand-up comedy. So I was like, I have to try this thing. Like it would hurt too much to not try it. And how it works is, so I moved to Chicago for a job, but I also knew that Chicago's where like a lot of comedy legends had come from, Steve Carell, Stephen Colbert, Bill Murray, like all these big people, Tina Fey. So I moved there, and you basically look through the newspaper, see where the open mics are, and you just go and put your name on a list, and then you get up on stage and you get 5 minutes in front of people you don't know. And that's kind of how you get started. And the first few years, my visa was tied to my work, so I couldn't actually make money doing stand-up. So all I could do was open mics. And that's kind of what you do. You just, from 2001 to 2007, I just did open mics over and over in front of drunk people in Chicago. And then I got pretty lucky over and over and over and over. It was right place, right time, over and over, So the reason that I'm here, a lot of it is due to luck. And I feel extremely grateful. I always say, of all the parallel universes, this is the only one where I'm here talking to you.
This is the simulation where you become a movie star.
This is it, man. In every other one, I got nothing going on. So I feel very, very grateful, and I feel very, very, very fortunate. It was one of those, where you're doing comedy. So I moved to New York in 2007 with my wife, Emily, and we were to like sort of pursue comedy. And I just ended up having a good set in front of somebody who then later got me a job. And then that job led to another job, led to another job, led to another job. So it was all these small steps leading to the career I have now. But at each point there was like serendipity, I just like the right person saw me at just the right time or things like that. And then all sort of fingers crossed, I know this can go away at any second.
Well, there's a big gulf there because you're on a visa and you have a job where you were working with computers, and then you're showing up to open mics and don't make a dime and just get pelted with occasional abuse and you get better at your craft. So then when do you actually switch from making a living from sitting in front of a computer screen to making a living off of comedy? And then how does the visa work? Like when does the visa actually start becoming something you can apply for being a creative?
So this is how it works for me. What you have to do is get heckled by a beautiful American woman at a show, fall in love with her, have her fall in love with you, marry her, and you get a green card. So that's how it works for me.
That's a good plan.
Right place, right time, man. I'm telling you again. So that's how it worked for me. If I getting a creative visa, and I know friends who've gotten it, is very, very tricky because you basically have to prove that nobody else who's American can do this job. And what we do is so amorphous and vague and hard to articulate anyway. But how it worked for us was, so we met in 2006. I was on my second H-1B visa, which I think that there's still a hold on H-1B visas. So I really, really relate with that issue. I was on my second and final H-1B visa, met Emily, we fell in love. As my visa was running out, we were like,
Wow.
we should get married. And it did not feel like a practical decision. It was a decision made out of love. We knew already at that point. We'd been through some
Kumail loves his wife.
and she says she loves me. Uh, you heard it here first, and Yang speaks. So we basically got married. I applied for a green card, got the green card. You do the whole interview, where there's a woman who's like, we had a woman who was trying to like trick us and make sure that our love was real.
What color is her toothbrush?
I mean, it's that kind of stuff. It really is. What helped us is, we had, so we did our own, we just basically stood in line at City Hall and got married. And then when we went to meet my parents, when her and I went to meet my parents, we were already married. We'd been married for 2 weeks. And even though Emily's not the person that they had imagined in their heads, I mean, I give them all the credit in the world. They fully accepted her, and they threw a traditional Pakistani wedding. And they had a Pakistani videographer there. And this guy made a DVD of our wedding that is the cheesiest fucking thing you've ever seen. It starts with a picture of the guy actually editing on his thing. So when I put in my wedding DVD, the first thing is this guy editing. And the song, do you remember that song, I Will Be Your Hero, Baby?
Of course. Who does not know that song? It's Enrique Iglesias. I will take away your pain.
Yeah, it's a good song. But I don't know if you want it playing on a loop over your wedding video over and over and over. So we took that with us. We just had enough like evidence that obviously we weren't lying. And then as soon as we got married,
you showed them the video. You're like, check this out. And then the person's like, well,
like, make this up. She's like, okay, I guess you get a green card. That allowed me to quit my job. We decided to just like move to New York with savings and no money, which was a huge mistake. And she's a therapist, so she basically was like, I will get a job and support you. You can follow your dream. And she just believed in me, man. I don't know why. I think even her friends and family were like, he's a great guy, but what are you doing?
He's a great guy, but what are you doing? That's like there's definitely the but after that.
What's wild is how much you still have to mail stuff. I just mailed stuff today. And when you need to mail things, there are times when you're like, am I going to go to the post office? Am I out of stamps? Do I have envelopes and all of that stuff? And one way to make it so that you always have what you need is stamps.com. We used it on the campaign. We had this freaking post office in the campaign office. It was actually quite fun. It made me feel very accomplished looking at that. But now that we're in this circumstance, stamps.com can actually make it so that all the stuff you need from the post office is right off your computer and you don't need to go. You'll save time and money and you'll feel very modern and current. Right now, listeners to Yang Speaks get a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a digital scale without any long-term commitment. Go to stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and type in Yang. That's stamps.com, enter Yang, and you will get some stuff, including free postage and a free digital scale, no long-term commitment. Why not, really? It's 2020. Why not just let stamps.com actually save you that trip? Stamps.com also offers UPS services with discounts up to 62% and no residential surcharges. That's right, Stamps.com works for UPS too.
Well, I have at least a sense that I understand that era from The Big Sick, as I'm sure a lot of people who are watching and listening to this, if you haven't seen The Big Sick, you need to see it. It's a brilliant and touching and poignant movie, but it's somewhat autobiographical in terms of your relationship with Emily. and some of that era, like you're in clubs performing, like you tell some of the jokes that I imagine you might have told in real life. That kind of belief, that is profound, where someone sees something in you that maybe you're not even sure about all of the time, because, you know, when you're putting yourself out there as a creative, it's hard to believe in even yourself all the time.
Yeah, especially because you just know the numbers, I mean, you don't know specifically the numbers, but you know that what you're going for is so rare and so hard to achieve, and so many things have to line up exactly perfectly. And, Emily still says that she never doubted that I would be. I don't know what she was thinking would happen, but she never doubted that I would have some level of success in this industry. It's the same. We sort of have that for each other, I think. Like, I believe in her more than sometimes she believes in herself, and vice versa. So I am, honestly, if it wasn't for her, I would definitely not be here right now. So she basically supported me for a year and a half while I did open mics in New York. I sort of had to start over there, and then I sort of got a job like opening for a comedy tour. Then I got a job writing for a TV show, and then that show gave me a job acting. So it was all like these tiny little steps, but it all happened because Emily took a job and supported me for a year.
Emily seems like a creative powerhouse in her own right, and anyone who wants to listen to the two of you, you have a podcast, Staying In, that is kind of quarantine themed, as people might be able to tell. and it's about trying to stay stable and mentally healthy during a time when we're spending a lot of time indoors with ourselves or our significant others. And it's honest, it's funny, like the two of you seem like you enhance each other creatively, is the sense one gets from the outside.
Yeah, we certainly enhance each other creatively, and I like to think personally as well. I feel like we both think that we got the better end of the deal. I think she thinks that. I definitely think that. So it's definitely a little bit greater than the sum of our parts. It's even though we obviously have our issues, everyone does, but I feel like in quarantine specifically, because you mentioned the big sick, so you might know Emily's in a high risk group for this virus, right? So we had to lock down before most people locked down, and we're still very, very strict about it. It's just too scary. We haven't seen anybody. We only leave the house at night and go for a walk when there aren't people around and stuff like that. So in this time, just really spending time with only each other, it has strengthened our relationship, and it has made our communication a lot better. I feel like, it's sometimes it can be easy to take your partner for granted and not ask them, like, how are you feeling? How's your day going? How are you doing this week? That basic kind of stuff, it can be easy to go on autopilot with that. And I think quarantine has shown us that those conversations, just being like, how are you feeling, is very, very, it's just essential. And it's also me asking her how she's feeling gives me more intentionality in the way I approach my life during this too, because literally all we have is each other right now.
Well, before we move on to another topic, we need to expand H-1B visas in the United States. It really makes no sense, our current system, and I have friends who've gone through versions of it. And the fact is, these companies have to jump through a million hoops to say, look, only this person can do this job. I can't find an American to do this job. But in real life, the choice is between them hiring those folks and having them live and work in the United States, or them hiring them in another country. And to me, which would you prefer if you were us, them hiring hundreds of people and having them here in the US, where they end up creating value and being massive value generators, or that company opening an office in Pakistan or India or Eastern Europe or wherever it is? Like, to me, that's a very easy call. And you let them hire who they want here in the United States, and then you get that value natively. Every knowledge worker ends up supporting multiple workers in other aspects of the economy, which is pretty obvious if you think about it. But if you get hired by this firm and you're working as a programmer or whatnot, you're going to end up pumping a lot of money for the takeout restaurant, for the landlord, the dry cleaner, the cleaning service, the dog walker, like you name it. It all ends up just circulating back through our economy as opposed to someone else's economy.
Oh yeah, as you said, it's just value add. The other thing is there's this sense, they're talking about immigration reform. There's this sense that the gates are wide open, that anybody can come to America. Nothing could be further from the truth. As a kid in Pakistan with my family, just trying to get a visit visa to America to come visit my sister's brother, it's almost impossible. It's so hard just to get a visit visa, especially from a place like Pakistan. Getting an H-1B visa, as you said, companies have to jump through a lot of hoops. So there's this idea that anybody can just move in and it's easy. It is not easy. It's a very difficult process, and there's a lot of vetting that happens.
Just the thought that you might have had to leave the States if you had not fallen in love with Emily, et cetera, I'm sure is like making everyone think it's like, wow, I can't imagine an American cultural landscape without Kumail, honestly, like over the last...
Oh, really? You can? Well, that's very flattering. I don't think it's true, but I feel, obviously this is my country. This is my home. And the idea that let's face it, a big chunk of this country does not see me as American. It does not accept me as American, even though I know the problem is not with me, the problem is with them. It's still a little heartbreaking to me, and it still gets to me, the fact that, 44% of the country probably wouldn't see me as belonging here.
I feel like you might be an exception, my friend, where if they've seen you in something, then all of a sudden you become familiar to them in a way that that might hopefully engender, some positivity. I feel like you'd get that if you went to a lot of places. And when you were performing your comedy, I feel like you might know this country in a way that a lot of people don't, because comedians head to small towns and medium-sized cities and work like a club where, like you said, a few dozen drunk people show up and then you're there with a bunch of other comics, and you end up staying overnight in places that a lot of Americans will never see and never visit. Did you have that experience as a comedian, or were you more exclusively in Chicago and New York?
I certainly had that experience. Not as much. I couldn't do it in Chicago because I couldn't make money. So I would go sometimes do those shows just to do them. But certainly in New York, I have done tours of tiny towns. And, I grew up in a really big city. I grew up in Karachi, which is like 20 million people. I lived in Chicago. I lived in New York. So I was always very metropolitan. Going to these small towns was really very eye-opening because I'll be honest, before I went to them, I was a little bit, I thought, oh, I don't see the appeal. Like if I lived there, I would move out. But then going there, you do a show in a tiny town. I did this show, I'm thinking of the specific one. I did a show in a tiny town in Ohio. Then afterwards, everybody went to a bar and all the people from the show went to the bar. And I was kind of hanging out and talking to these people who'd sort of grown up there. And some of them had been like best friends with each other since the second grade, And I thought that was really beautiful. And even though a lot of these people may not agree with me politically now, I realized that, as trite as this sounds, we all truly have a lot more in common than we don't. I know sometimes that gets obscured by just the conversation and sort of the screaming at each other. But it made me feel ultimately optimistic about where we're headed in this grand experiment.
I genuinely think comedians could be the great unifying force of our society, in part because of those experiences that so many of you have had.
That's a lot of pressure to put on a bunch of drunks and drug addicts, dude.
I was just in one place that feels very, very uplifting, and I'd urge you to try and get there, though I guess it'd be far afield for you, and then you're probably not going to break isolation. But Dave Chappelle has a cornfield near his house, and he's been doing live comedy shows there with comedians who just come and go. Essentially, I think that their nickname for it was Chappelle Summer Camp. So
Yeah.
it actually takes some of the ingredients you're describing, where it's a very small town. What people are discovering, it's essentially like a field of dreams of comedy. The whole thing blows your mind. Like, you go there, and because it's a cornfield, everyone's spread out, and it's very socially distanced. And you're just like, what am I seeing? I'm seeing like some of the best comedians in the world in this cornfield. And it felt quintessentially American, in part because of the backdrop. It's like just fields of corn in the summer. There's a gazebo. Anyway, so, but the comedians I talk to, because they interact with people in the same way you do, it's like, look, we all have a lot in common. We all want the same things. And there are these political discussions that are trying to pit us against each other in a way that I don't think would apply if we were just sitting across a kitchen table from each other, or if we were in the same bar at the same night. Like, then you would just end up bonding over your common humanity, instead of, typing some nasty comment in in Twitter or Facebook or what have you. So I'm serious that I feel like comedians are having a different conversation with Americans than politicians, for sure. Like, a better conversation in many respects.
I think that's right. What you said about, one of my best friends in the world is Indian, and people always like a Pakistani and an Indian. And it's like, yeah, those lines don't exist when you're like sitting next to someone or eating with them. I always find, like, if you look at the Big Sick, there's a lot of eating scenes that happen whenever whenever walls come down and people connect. And I really feel like, if the world could, if I could bring some of these people in and feed them Pakistani food, I don't think they could think of that place in the way that they think of it right now, because our food's too good.
Yes, well said. Kumail's effort will be like Pakistani restaurants across the country, letting people know that this place is too delicious to dislike.
That's right. I mean, that is what we are. We're too delicious to dislike. That should be on our flag.
That's a pretty good tagline. Comedians and chefs bringing the world together. I don't mind it. So when you talk about the politics of this moment, so you've got a green card. Are you a citizen now, or are you still trafficking?
I am a citizen now.
Oh, so you have the freaking full rights and privileges. You took the test. Was the test as hard as they say?
No, the test was pretty easy. In fact, I don't know how much I could say, because I read something where they were like, oh, we can start revoking citizenships and all this shit.
Oh, no. You're in for good. Don't worry, man. You can spill the beans. Nothing's going to happen. It's irreversible.
I went in and I sat with this guy, and I was really nervous. And he was an Asian guy, very nice. And right from the beginning, he asked me a couple questions, and then he saw I was nervous, and he was like, don't be nervous. You're going to pass. Don't worry about this. And I just thought it was really, really sweet. Like, he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to put me at ease. He didn't have to make me feel better. The person who interviewed us for the green card certainly didn't do that. She was trying to get us. She was trying to get us to contradict ourselves. And she was certainly like aggressive. But this guy was super nice. So that test was not that hard. No. So yeah, I'm here for good. Can't get rid of me.
Yeah. Look at this. Full rights and privileges. So and you're paying oodles in taxes, which will make some people very happy.
Yeah, California, it's a big percentage.
Okay, this episode of Yang Speaks is brought to you by Freshly. Okay, I'm gonna call this a command for everybody listening. Stop eating like crap. And that might be projecting, because I've been eating like crap. Except when I eat my Freshly meals, because they're pretty good and they're super healthy. Because it's simple. You can avoid the grocery store, which avoids COVID. And you get these fully prepared dinners delivered fresh, not frozen, right to your freaking door. So you're going to get golden oven fried chicken, not the oil fried chicken, but also creamy risotto. But then you've got beef brisket that falls apart, and it's beautiful and awesome and healthy. And then there's 30 other health conscious options to choose from at Freshly. So join 1.5 million satisfied customers of Freshly and skip the shopping, prepping, cooking, and cleanup and stop eating like crap. So Freshly is offering our Yang Speak listeners $40 off their first 2 orders at freshly.com/yang. That's Freshly, FRESHLY.com/yang, YANG. Check it out. It is worth it. Your body will thank you. Your wallet will probably thank you. Freshly.com/yang.
So you and I connected in part because there was an Asian American political event. We were trying to rally folks in the community. Do you have a different perspective on what's going on politically as a result of the fact that you had to essentially fight to stay in this country, you become a citizen, and then now you are, in my mind, one of the most prominent Pakistani American figures, which... And I can relate to aspects of this because, there aren't that many like Asian American presidential candidates.
No, not that many. Let me see how many I can think of.
Yeah, there's Andrew Yang and there's I feel like you became a citizen just as our country started to really turn against each other or feel like it's getting torn apart. And I take it that so you know about me, like I've endorsed Joe and Kamala, like, I'm trying to get folks to just vote, because I feel like the more people that vote, the better off we're going to be.
That's right.
But I feel like you have a different perspective because you're like a kind of a recently minted American. You're just like, you had to fight to get it. And then here we are at this political moment where it feels like there's a ton at stake. In November.
Yeah, I always feel like, obviously, I relate to immigration issues very intimately, and the demonization of immigrants. You remember when they were talking about the caravan from Mexico and stuff? It never. First of all, I find it obviously immoral and unethical, but on top of that, it's also extremely illogical because you were born here. We had to fight to come here. We chose America as our home. We gave up our lives. We put everything on the line to choose better lives for ourselves and our families. I mean, what's more American than that, right? The pursuit of life. What is it? Life, liberty, happiness, whatever it is. I don't remember from the citizenship.
From the test. Test was too long ago.
That was a long time ago. But to me, that should be something that's commended. I mean, these people are patriotic. They chose America. They weren't just born here. So I find that it just never makes sense to me that people are able to demonize immigrants so easily. And yeah, obviously this election is very, very important. My parents moved here after I did. My parents have been here now maybe 12 years or so. And they moved from Karachi, and they landed here and they love America. They were like, oh my God, things are much easier here. They felt really accepted. My mom was seeing her that happy and that comfortable. It just brought so much joy to me. And then in the last few years, it's been very difficult for her. Her relationship to America has changed, and the way she looks, the way she sees America has changed. Now when I talk to her, all she does is really talk about politics and how scared she is. And she says, they don't want us here. I'm like, no, Mom, there's a certain percentage of people. This is not how it is. Things can turn very quickly. And she said something that really broke my heart. She's like, we already left Pakistan. Where do we go from here? Where will we go when we have to leave here?
That's so heartbreaking. She's been here for 12 years and she's happy for the first 10 years. And then the last 2 years, she's like, wait a minute. I'm not sure if this place actually wants people like me.
Yeah, it's been really, really, really devastating, and I sort of tell her this is something that, This is the difficult balance, right? Like, how do you stay engaged and up on the news and still keep your wits about you? Like, how do you keep your mental health in check while the world seems to be falling apart? So I tell her, I'm like, you know how you're going to vote, you know how your friends are going to vote. Don't watch the news all day, every day. I don't think our brains are designed to really take that much stimulus over and over and over. This is how I feel about Twitter, even though I am on it more than I should be. If you look at your replies, if you look at your replies, even if they're positive, it's really overwhelming. I don't think we're supposed to get that much information, that much communication, that much feedback from that many people in like such a short period of time.
You don't think that was happening in the state of nature, where you say something on the campfire and then all of a sudden, like, hundreds of people start pelting you with their opinion?
No, yeah, people are tweeting you to dunk on you. No, that did not happen. This is all completely new. So that's what I tell her. I'm like, Ma, there's too much news right now. Too much is going on. I have to take breaks very, very consistently. And so that's what I try and tell her. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot wrapped up in this election for all of us, and specifically for me, because I just keep thinking of my mom. Sometimes I wish I lived in a different state so my vote could actually count more.
Well, you can make a huge difference trying to move votes in swing districts around the country. And I agree with you about there being an optimal amount of news and social media to consume in a given day. I'm on CNN, and CNN has 24 hours of news. But I grew up in a time when there was approximately 30 minutes of news when it was like just and here's your nightly news, and we'll do it again, like the local version and whatnot. And I'm convinced that there's an optimal amount of news that's significantly less than 24 hours. Because the fact is, if I have hours of bandwidth of content to fill, then I'll talk about something, and I'll try and make it interesting. I'll gin up emotional responses to whatever the heck I'm talking about. And social media is that compounded. And you're right. That's right. So I'm very much on Twitter, and it was part of my presidential campaign. So it was very, high utility, and it continues to be high utility because I feel like it's my responsibility, and I think you and Emily clearly feel similarly, where it's my responsibility to try and put some positive sentiments or ideas out there, because people kind of turn to me for a sense of uplift, and I'm very touched by that, and I want to be that, and so it's like a function of who I am now and part of my professional role. But occasionally someone in my Twitter feed will be like, "Oh, I'm trying to get off Twitter." I'm like, "Go!"
Yeah, leave. Exactly. I after this election, I'm really gonna take a step back from Twitter. I've certainly done that. As you see, I'm more active now than I was a couple months ago, and that was by design. I was like, as we get closer to the election, I'll see if I can use my platform for any good. Maybe I'm just fooling myself, but at least the attempt is there. I can look myself and say, well, I did something. No matter what happens. But I think you're right. It is high value. I got on Twitter because it helped my touring tremendously. When you would go to before people know your name, if you're going to a small town, usually you do radio shows and stuff, and you're sort of getting a weird smattering of people who've heard you on that radio show. But if it's Twitter, that's a very targeted thing. That's a self-selected audience, right? Those are the people who want to hear from you. So I started on it because touring, I didn't have to do 6 a.m. radio shows with douchebags anymore, and so that was very helpful. And what you said about people looking to you for uplift and positivity, I think that's very, very important, and that's an essential service. Emily and I have talked about this, in a time like this, as people who make stuff, I think there are two ways you can go, right? You can like fight against something, or you can fight for something. And I think both are very valid. I think fighting against stuff is very valid. I think that there are beautiful pieces of art that have come from cynicism and anger, and negativity, like beautiful pieces of art, and I find them essential. I think our role is to fight for something. That's just, I think, how our personalities are. That's how our brains work. That's how we see the world. Both Emily and I are, by nature, very optimistic people, and we're generally very pretty positive people. And so that's what we sort of decided. We try and do stuff that fights for the positive rather than fighting against the negative, which I do think is still it's a very, very valid battle. We have this show on Apple TV Plus called Little America. That's a show that we created. That's an anthology show. So every episode is completely different, and then an anthology show based on true stories of immigrants to America. And that's the kind of stuff we want to do, it just sort of, these are like very small stories. Some are sad, some are happy, some are funny. Some are weird and quirky, some are like exciting and thrilling. One's like a sports movie, So that's what we sort of decided we wanted to do, is we want to put stuff out that conveys our point of view in a way that hopefully makes people feel a little less lonely and a little more optimistic.
Well, that's what I hoped my presidential campaign would be, Kumail, is that be for something, present a vision that people can get excited about. Because one of the frustrations I have is that in politics, a lot of people will just point out the problem and then being like, we should really think about what to do about that. And they just move on. It's like, well, I'm kind of sure that we should actually put something on the table. And so when I started my campaign, and I was for universal basic income, still am, and saying, hey, we should give everyone $1,000 a month, like people were treating it like, haha, like that's impossible, that can't happen. And then now fast forward not that long afterwards, 55% of Americans are on board, and something like 75% of Americans are for cash relief. And a lot of it's that you present this positive vision. You say, look, like, I'm with you in that I'm naturally optimistic and constructive. And it was funny too, is that when I was running, people presented me as like the doomer candidate because I was talking about how AI is going to take the jobs, and the self-driving trucks are going to lead the truck.
I mean, you got to have that conversation too.
Yeah, but so it was funny is that people saw me as doom and gloom on one hand, but then I had this relatively positive manner, and I thought like a vision where it's like, look, like we don't have to just wait for the truckers to riot. Like we can try and like build a runway for everyone so that we can start like planning for a future that I think is like right around the corner. And then now the pandemic ended up speeding it up.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think your campaign did so much work in moving the conversation in a positive direction and bringing up things and ways of looking at problems that I thought was very, very constructive. The effect you had on the campaign, the effect your campaign had on the conversation is still profound and being felt. And I think you talking about AI taking jobs and stuff, it's so weird to me that people don't want to hear that stuff or talk about it, where if you think about it for 30 seconds, it's inevitable that that's where we're headed, and that's something that we need to be ready for and deal with, especially because we're in this situation where massive tech companies control our lives in ways that are so complete and thorough. We've given up so much just to have, just for convenience, that it's really shocking how quickly it happened. And obviously Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook is in the news all the time. I think that's a great example of a massive tech force that's affected the world, and I believe to be a profoundly negative way. And so I think these conversations are essential. We can't ignore them anymore.
I have friends in Silicon Valley who could not watch Silicon Valley or show on HBO because they said hit too close to home. They were like, it's too real.
The first time it's really interesting because our show we started filming in 2011, I think, maybe 2000. No, wait, what? Maybe 2013. I forget. But when I was doing the pilot, it was Mike Judge, it was HBO. I told my friends, I was like, I'm doing this pilot. They're like, what's it about? And I said, it's called Silicon Valley. And they were like, oh, is it set in the 90s? I'm like, no, there's crazy shit going on in Silicon Valley right now. It's weird to think back then we didn't know. I mean, some people did, but we didn't know who Elon Musk was. We didn't know who Peter Thiel was. Like, people had not heard these names. Now these are household names. In the 6 years that we ran, or the 7 years that we ran, the way that people look at Silicon Valley has changed so quickly. And for me, it was a real wake-up call because I think it was season 2 or 3. We would sort of do these trips, right? We would go to Silicon Valley and we would show the episode and we'd sort of like tour companies and get to see what they were working on. And they were very excited to have us because we're we're doing a show about what they do. I was stunned at what little thought was going into the moral and ethical ramifications of the technology that they were working on. I remember, I won't name the company, but they were showing us this new product that's now on the market that many people have. And they were like, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. And so we brought up a privacy concern. And it wasn't, they were shocked that they were asked this question. They didn't even have like a fake corporate answer ready to go. They were stunned and a little upset and disappointed that we would even think of that. I feel like there's this sense in the tech world, and I'm sure you know this much better than I do, that technology is completely amoral. It's a tool, you make it, and how it's used, well, it's not up to us. Well, I don't think that's right. I think, first of all, there's no way that laws can keep up with technology. And I do think it's the responsibility of people developing this technology to consider the possible negative uses for it, the deep fake stuff, all that stuff. I don't think you can just like keep developing and close your eyes and ears to the fact that these things can be really misused.
They're being misused every day, in part because they serve the almighty marketplace. And we know right now the marketplace just wants to monetize us and our attention, whether or not that's good for democracy, our mental health, humanity, free will, our ability to come together and solve problems, our ability to settle on facts or the truth. We're all now just subject to this surveillance capitalism machine that sells and resells us to the tune of 200 billion plus a year.
Yeah, that's what you always hear, where you're like, if the app is free, you're the product. And
so right now I'm trying to help people wake up to what's going on with our data and our privacy rights. There's actually a prop in California in November, Prop 24, that I'm super excited about, that it's going to create a dedicated data protection agency in the state of California to look out for California data and privacy rights, which right now a lot of companies are frankly just totally abusing and just being like, whatever, like there's no enforcement.
Of course.
So if Prop 24 passes in November, then all of a sudden the state has to create an enforcement agency and mechanism, and then you're going to see corporate behavior change because until there's actually someone looking after it and then showing up and saying, hey, like there's a problem here. So believe it or not, this stuff is cutting edge right now. This stuff's literally on the ballot in like a matter of weeks.
Good. I mean, that's the tricky thing, if you see like these hearings when like Zuckerberg or any of these folks go, the questions they're being asked, it's scary.
They're not inspiring. It's not inspiring stuff.
About the most basic tech stuff. Like it just is. It's really upsetting that. I honestly, I mean, this Prop 24. Vote yes on Prop 24. That's good. I'm gonna use Twitter to get that word out, because I do think that is sort of the big existential crisis that we're heading towards right now. Is big tech. I think it's a formidable foe. I feel like for all the great stuff that the internet has done, I think it's it's fractured the conversation so much to the point where it's not even a conversation. I remember when I was a computer science major, I would go to my professor's office, and he was this guy. He was like a philosopher and a computer scientist, and he was one of the original guys who was involved with the internet and stuff. And he had this quote on his desk from a group of early people who were sort of trying to talk about technology and the benefits it's going to provide humanity. And he said something like, "The rise of the internet is the promise of the return of voice." And I found that so inspiring. I was like, that's true. The promise of the internet is I can talk to someone in Bulgaria. I can like have a real conversation with them. You really can connect with people who have different experiences from you, different perspectives from you, see the world entirely differently, and you can have a conversation with them. In reality, what's happened is you just find the people who exactly agree with you, and then you just talk amongst yourselves, and then you yell at the other people who disagree with you. So it's really gone in a completely different direction than I think these original sort of tech thinkers had thought it would. And I don't know how. I don't know where we go. I feel like the internet is like this serpent that we made that's now swallowing us whole.
One of my goals is to get the serpent under control, Kumail, and like I may actually have that job before too long if things head in a particular direction.
I hope they head in a particular direction.
It's funny. I was just musing to myself the fact that I feel like you're one of the most prominent voices in this direction because of Silicon Valley, which is sort of ironic because obviously it was a television show, and yet I feel like everyone identifies you so closely with this set of issues in part because we just watched you on HBO for years on end.
I know, and I'm just saying stuff that they wrote for me. I really shouldn't be the guy. Don't look to me for any insight into it, but we the writers and the creators were very, very. I mean, they knew all these CEOs, right? So we really
it's all real. Like the fact that it's like art imitating life or whatnot. Plus the fact that you're genuinely like a computer science grad who worked in the field for years. So I don't know if that helped them cast you. Where they're like, oh, this guy's really convincing.
Well, no, because I was really bad at computer science. I never got it, but I was just. It's funny to go from sitting behind a row of computers, being the worst guy, to then being on set, sitting behind a row of computers and being the best guy. Like I was the only one out of the cast that like understood a little bit what the code was. So that was a weird experience. It didn't really, help me too much knowing the tech side of it. Really what, my approach to it was the character itself. Like, that type of guy was really my way in.
Well, you did a phenomenal job on that show. I can't wait to see you on the big screen with the Eternals. You're a literal hero to so many people and a force for progress and reason and humanity. I mean, your family story is incredible. It's such an American story. And we have to let people know that you're American, your mom's American, I'm American, and that America is us. It doesn't look like a particular set of images that maybe one political party is putting out there being like, hey, let's just try and like conflate this with America. America is us, it's you, it's you and yours.
Exactly. America looks like the world because the world is in America. I remember the day I got my citizenship. You're in a room, and you sort of do the pledge and everything, and then a video played. And the video was a music video that they had made for this, Proud to be an American. And it was like cowboys on horses and like little white girls on swings. And then Obama comes on.
Was it the actual song, I'm proud to be an American? Wow, they really use that when you become a citizen? It's officially the citizenship song of the United States.
I'll tell you, man, it sounds cheesy, but I had tears running down my face. In my head, I was like, I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. But then Obama comes on and he gives you this speech, this really moving speech about welcome to the country. You're here now. You're one of us. And I just felt so full of hope and optimism. And I don't know what's happening with people who become citizens now. I can't imagine that there's a video that plays that makes anybody feel
I have a feeling they replaced the Obama part. I have a feeling that they like changed that part. They probably kept the first part though.
Oh, I'm sure they kept the first part. There may be some MAGA hats added to it.
Oh, I tweeted during the RNC that I really like that song because I really do like that song. Like they play it, I'm proud to be, and I was like, I really like this song. And then all these folks,
know, it's tough.
All these folks were like, oh, like I used to love it, or oh, they ruined it for me, and I was like, oh, they haven't ruined it for me. I still just love this song. Yeah. So you're relating that experience. I mean, like I'm proud you're an American. I know a lot of us are, Kumail, and hopefully we can keep that energy and belief strong so that your mom feels right at home here, really as soon as this election's up, but even before then.
I hope so. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Such a pleasure. Kumail Nanjiani, let's keep an eye out. He's got a podcast with Emily, and he has this show, Little America. It's on Apple Plus. So you can check out some inspiring stories of immigrants doing great things around the country.
And that show is free right now, so you don't need to have a subscription to Apple TV Plus. Just go on your Apple TV, search for Little America, and you can watch all the episodes for free.
Little America's free on Apple Plus. That's great. Yang Speaks, people love free. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah, I know you have the time to watch it right now.
Thank you for listening in. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you did, please do subscribe to Yang Speaks and click on notifications so we can let you know every time we have a new episode.